There are growing fears that the Sudan conflict between the state's armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces could spiral into an all-out ethnic violence that puts the nation at risk. The paramilitary force has pressed ahead with its expulsion of ethnic African Masalit clan from West Darfur. 7 months of war have left a wave of destruction, with about half the population in need of humanitarian aid. I'll discuss this ongoing violence with Sudanese journalist Arif Elsaui, and here's how that conversation went.
The conflict is spreading out of the usual cities that started with it in the first few weeks and then the few 3 months. So now we are witnessing the conflict in Darfur, of course, like most of the states in Darfur, in Western Darfur and in South Darfur, in Kordofan as well, in some parts in Kordofan, including Al Ubaid, the capital of North Kordofan, and of course, Khartoum, the three cities in Khartoum, between cities in Khartoum, Bahri, Khartoum, Durman, and Khartoum. Of course, that's affecting the main road supplies items from the city to the city, from the state to state, and of course to the border of Sudan in eastern Sudan. That also applies to so many people try to move from Khartoum and Darfur to border of Chad in the Western Africa, or Egypt in northern, or in Ethiopia in East Africa. So all the cities, all this, the countries, the neighbor countries in Sudan are very affecting what have been seen according to the UN and the IOM, UNHCR, that there is, the numbers are increasing. There is almost 5 million Sudanese. They had to leave their home countries, their hometowns and villages to the safer place, whether inside Sudan or crossing the borders to the neighbor countries. The other dimension, of course, the economy also is struggling for that. The price is going high, as we are seeing and monitoring every day. The inflation, the dollar also has jumped from 65 to 600 to 1,000 pounds, Sudanese pounds. Also, there is a threat on the pipeline of the oil. Of course, most of the oil coming from South Sudan. South Sudan now they're worried more about the facilities of the oil. So this is the situation now. Like up to now, it doesn't look like the conflict is contained or is reducing in terms of the places and the locations that it's into.
Now, when we take a look at the underlying causes of that conflict in Sudan, two groups come up, and that's the military and the paramilitary groups. What are the dynamics around that, and how has that conflict contributed to this humanitarian crisis that we're witnessing at the moment?
Well, the thing is, as the African Union concluded in the first years of the conflict, that is the region and the African Union, IGAD, there is some initiative to start in the beginning of the past week to stop the conflict. But as all that initiatives fail in the coming weeks after the war, we start seeing another dimension of the war and the conflict in Sudan. It's not that you can say this is between the army, SAF and RSF anymore, because I think you have seen militias groups, people looting and stealing, and became like more tight than we thought in the beginning. Like this war between the two parties, you can bring them to the table and then you can talk to them through the agenda of the war. But the fact is, from the ground, the conflict is taking every day different scale. Like so other people and groups and tribes and joining the conflict for different interests. Not necessarily this is ideological, political support to one side and another, but I think the more the conflict is continued, the more we're seeing the conflict in the ground. And then it will become a bit more complicated that to bring all these parties to the table to negotiate something that is not clear for them. What is necessary now is try to take advantage of the situation that there's still two major parties in the ground now fighting, the RSF and SAF. But the more you wait, the more the international community waits to see for this not to put enough pressure on the two parties to come to the table. I think we are going to see a different scale of the conflict and violence in Sudan.
So when we talk about life in Sudan in some of those impacted areas, one has to talk about women and children in particular. What is life like for women and children in those areas outside of violence? Obviously, I'd imagine that many of them are unable to go to school, having to walk long distances just to get food and water. If they're able to get food and water, is aid able to make its way to some of these individuals?
Yeah, with the situation, the idea of all the negotiation, Jeddah, for example, Syria area, which is the initiative took by the United States of America and the Syria area to bring the two parties. The main goal there is to assist the humanitarian aid organization to deliver the aid to the people who need it most. And as I'm speaking now, we're seeing the Sudanese, they never witnessed, of course, there is war in Sudan in the last 57 years, there and here, but they haven't witnessed a scale of violence like this. And so that's when they see the light, because they never been there for this moment, actually took them by surprise. We have seen the Sudanese, they play and they move from the home without taking anything. So they're stuck in the borders, for example, in Egypt for so long to wait for the visa to cross the border, also in Ethiopia, also in Eritrea. And we have seen footage and videos and circulating around social media about the Sudanese in the most hundreds of them in Eritrea. So this kind of things we haven't seen before, and mostly like this, especially in the central Sudan, especially in the northern Sudan, they're always far from central Sudan. But now I think they're very close, even in the cities that there is no actual violence, actual conflict there. So as I mentioned, the bank has shut down for months actually. So people they couldn't access that credit or that saving. There's some banks are stolen, looted, and even the deposit safe also was taken. So basically, most of the people they lose a lot in this, for whether they couldn't access to the financial to help them in this situation, or the banks now in deep risk, actually in very risk, because some of the banks they lose assets and the safe deposit, the credit, all that affected the life, of course. Now we are talking about the contribution from the Sudanese diaspora to their families and the loved ones who are left there in the bad situation. Also is taking from that safe. Now, my personal knowledge that so many of my friends I know now they had to step in and try to help their families who are in Sudan, and using even that safe. Some of them that are working and living for 20 years actually, and all that safe now they had to go to help their families there in Sudan.
So one of the things I'd like us to talk about, or certainly for you to give us insights on, Arif, is the reaction of the global community to this war in Sudan. It's obviously escalated round about April. We're also familiar that there are a number of other wars that are going on across the world. There's the Russia-Ukraine conflict. There's the Hamas-Israel conflict that's happening at the moment. And the attention that's been given to those two wars seems to suggest that there's, I don't know if you want to call it a bias or or however you'd like to phrase it. But, I mean, we know that President Joe Biden was fighting tooth and nail to be able to get a huge amount of funding to go, not just for aid, but to fight the war. You know, there's been a huge global response to what's been happening between the Palestinians and Israel. So where does Africa stand when it comes to conflict and a response from the United Nations, from other Western countries, and in fact from its own brothers and sisters on the continent?
Well, it's very hard to see how the world I'm not going to say that ignores Sudan issues, but as you mentioned, there is so many conflict in the world after the Sudan war. There is ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, and then there is Gaza. There is and before that, the international community didn't put that enough pressure on to stop the war in the beginning. It was a chance because Sudan was going through a very difficult transition time, which is very common, and everyone knows that the transition is not an easy task to do. Need help from the international community, from the neighborhood countries to jump in and to help the country pass that 30 years of the dictatorship regime in Sudan. So that was not an easy task to do by just the Sudanese themselves, especially if the goal is to take the country from the authoritarian regime to a democratic regime. That is not an easy goal to do, just like the Sudanese, which they've been affected by the dictatorship for a long time. The political parties, the civil society, the media, and even the private sector was all that affected by the authoritarian regime during the 30 years.